Join us as we uncover true Bible history. From the creation of the heavens and the earth, to the first man and woman, from the forbidden tree of knowledge to ancient biblical manuscripts and translations. Discover information about early settlers in the ancient lands of Mesopotamia, Egypt, ancient Israel, and Rome. All this and more in our new series, Uncovering True Biblical History.
Contradictions of the Bible. Why are there so many contradictions? And if you believe that there are none, then you need to do your research. There are a lot of contradictions in the Bible, both in the New Testament and the Old. What you got to understand is Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John were not written by Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. This is why when the scripture starts in those books, it says the gospel according to Matthew, or according to Luke, or according to Mark. Okay? There are many that have accepted the New Testament as truth. There are many that are skeptical and have turned away from it completely because of these contradictions. What you got to understand is that the Most High did not write the whole Bible. Some scriptures were given by the Most High, and some were inspired by the Most High. Some scriptures were recorded as historical accounts. These three things need to be considered when reading the Bible. First, you need to consider the writer's viewpoint. 2, you need to distinguish between whether the scripture is figurative or literal. 3, you need to consider the context. 4, you must rightly divide the scriptures. Now, one thing you got to keep in mind is when you're rightly dividing the scriptures. Now, you got to understand these are scriptures that were interpreted by someone else. And so, what if they did not interpret the scriptures correctly? Then that means your rightly dividing could be off. That's why you have to go beyond the translated scriptures. And that's what we're going to do. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind is you need to remember this more than anything when reading the scriptures. There's a when, there's a what, there's a why, there's a how. These things will give you balance when reading the scriptures and trying to get an understanding of the word. I'm going to attempt to try to explain to you why there's so many contradictions in the scriptures. Now, you ever listen to a person's eyewitness account of some news event that took place? For instance, if there was some type of shooter or shooting or massacre that took place, some say there were more than one shooter, right? Some say there was only one shooter. There are different descriptions of the perpetrator. Some say that he had on a blue jacket. Some say he had on a black jacket, right? And the number of deaths may vary for the first few days. Now, even though some of these eyewitness accounts may differ, does that mean that the event never happened? Of course not. Keep in mind that there are different scribes that wrote the scriptures and different interpreters of those scriptures. Now, these are some of the contradictions of the New Testament. The story of the Messiah's birth. In Matthew chapter 2, verse 13 through 15, it depicts Joseph and Mary fleeing to Egypt with the baby Yahusha immediately after the wise men from the east had brought them gifts. But in Luke chapter 2, verse 22 through 40, claims that after the birth of Yahusha HaMashiach, his parents remained in Bethlehem for the time of Mary's purification, which was about 40 days under the Mosaic law. Afterwards, they brought Yahusha to Jerusalem to present him to Yahuwah. And then they returned to their home in Nazareth. So that's a clear contradiction. Another one is concerning the death of Judas. In Matthew chapter 27 verse 5, it states that he took the money he had received for betraying Yahusha, he threw it down in the temple and went and hanged himself. But in Acts chapter 1 verse 18, it claims that Judas used the money to purchase a field, and falling down headlong, he burst asunder in the midst, and all his bowels gushed out. That's the scripture. So that's a clear contradiction, right? Now, in the story of the Messiah being led to his execution, in the book of John, it recounts that he carried his own stake, or cross, what some would call it. But in the book of Mark, it recounts that a man named Simon carried the stake for him. Interesting, huh? Now, that could have been explained where maybe both happened. For instance, let's say the Messiah carried his cross for a certain distance, and John only recounts of him just carrying it. But maybe Mark is saying that, hey, yeah, the Messiah did carry his cross or his stake for so far, but then this man named Simon took over. You understand what I'm saying? So they both could be right, but it looks like a contradiction. And some scriptures can look like contradictions, but some are actual contradictions, right? So let's look at the scripture where Yahusha met Peter and Andrew. Now, according to Matthew, they met by the Sea of Galilee. But according to the book of John, they met by the river Jordan. And afterwards, Yahusha decided to go to Galilee. See what I mean? Now, also, in the Gospels, it say that Yahusha cursed the fig tree, right? But did the tree wither right away or all at once? Well, yes, in Matthew chapter 21 verse 19. But no, it withered overnight, according to Mark chapter 11 verse 20. So you get what I mean when I say there are some contradictions in the scriptures. And this is why you kind of got to be open-minded. You can't throw the whole New Testament out because you have this and you think that it's only in the New Testament. It's not. It's in the Old Testament also. In the Old Testament, Yah sent his prophet to threaten David with how many years of famine? Well, according to Samuel, 7 years. But according to Chronicles, it was 3 years. Which is it? Also, when you look at the story of Jehoiakim, right? How old was he when he became king of Jerusalem? Well, according to 2 Kings, he was 18 years old. But according to 2 Chronicles, he was only 8 years old. You see what I mean? Here's another one. How long did he rule over Jerusalem? Well, in 2 Kings, it says 3 months. But in 2 Chronicles, it says 3 months and 10 days. So was the writer, the scribe of Kings, just rounding it off to just 3 months, right? Wow. So as you see, this is what we're seeing here. There are some contradictions. There's some things to look into, okay? But as I said before, are these contradictions so bad to where we need to cast out the entire Bible or the New Testament? Well, just like we said before, sometimes when people give these accounts in the news, right? Sometimes they get it wrong. Sometimes they are saying this is what it was and that's what it was. We still know the event happens. Okay, maybe he didn't have on a green coat. Maybe it was a black coat. You understand what I'm saying? So this is why we got to be open-minded. Now watch this. When did David bring the Ark of the Covenant to Jerusalem? Before he defeated the Philistines or after? Well, in 2 Samuel, it says after. But in 1 Chronicles, it says before. Now, as I said, there are a lot of contradictions in the scriptures. Now, there's a lot more. I'm only covering a few. Okay. Now, so many people are on this journey to put together the greatest ancient puzzle of all times. Every piece of the puzzle must fit, and if it don't, you get rid of it. But is that what really happened when you're putting together a puzzle? No, you don't get rid of it. Pay attention to what I'm saying here, right? Now, what actually happens is you put that piece aside, don't you? And you wait until you see, after you get more and more pieces together, then that piece you'll find, oh, it does fit into this puzzle, right? Now, in all history, you'll always find some misinformation. You just have to do your due diligence and research to get to the bottom of what it is that you're trying to study. In some cases, we throw out the entire story because things don't line up correctly. But that's not really the way to be. Now, every now and then, I must admit, because we fix puzzles, I've done fixed puzzles for years. My kids like to fix puzzles, right? Now, every now and then, one piece of another puzzle may get mixed up into that one, right? But then once you get the puzzle together, you'll find out, oh, this piece really doesn't fit to this puzzle. It goes to another one, right? So you got to be wise in everything you do in your studying. You got to be wise, okay? Now, as in the case of the children of Zetu in the scriptures, right? Now watch this. How many were the children of Zetu? In Ezra, it says 945. But in Nehemiah, it says 845. Does that mean that there were no children of Zetu? Huh? You get what I'm saying? Well, I hope this explained to you why we have contradictions and why you must truly study to show yourself approved. I rest my case.
Join us as we uncover true Bible history. From the creation of the heavens and the earth, to the first man and woman, from the forbidden tree of knowledge, to ancient biblical manuscripts and translations. Discover information about early settlers in the ancient lands of Mesopotamia, Egypt, ancient Israel, and Rome. Hidden truths about the true name of God and about the early church age. From the time of the Messiah and the Last Supper to the time of Constantine, we will discover hidden information. We will uncover mistranslations and misquotes of the Bible to help you gain a better understanding of Scripture. Hellenistic Judaism and Greek influence of the New Testament will be revealed. In this series, we will unlock the truth about the people of the Bible, false gods of antiquity, their symbols, and their influence on Christianity. All this and more in our new series, Uncovering True Biblical History.